Welcome to the Prep Pigskin Report podcast, hosted by Papa Pig himself, Paul Rudy.
Welcome to PPR Podcast number 21. Burt Grossman is out of studio, joining us from his palatial villa in South Beach, Florida. And in the center of the conversation today, the Carrolls, a generation of Carrolls. John Carroll, everybody knows from Oceanside days, but really the topic of this conversation is the young man to his right, the new head coach at San Marcos, Coach Tom Carroll. Boy, that has a good ring to it, does it not, Tom?
It certainly does, and thank you for having me.
All right. Well, you know what? The school finally got it right. I mean, they could have been on this track a few years back. They went a different direction, but they made up for it. What did you learn in that interim?
It was a great period to really reflect. I got a chance to see, I'd kind of coached every single year for 13 years without even hesitating. So give me a chance to reflect a little bit. And ultimately, I got a chance to work with another great program and learned a lot of valuable lessons there. And it just made me hungrier. So timing's good.
The program you're referring to is Carlsbad, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So
I guess the question, go ahead. This is weird, Paul, and we're not together, you know?
I know.
It's just weird.
But I'll tell you what, I kind of like it.
I do too, actually. I guess the question everybody wants to know, are you going to have two Carrolls on staff? Are we losing you at PPR, or will you stay around and just help out? How's that going to work?
I don't think I can get, I don't think you guys are going to get rid of him yet. But I'm definitely going to lean on him as much as possible. And I know Coach wants to be out there as much as possible. So he definitely won't be a stranger.
But really, Tom,
I tell you that it's going to be a dream come true for a father to flip the switch and do a little bit of work with his son. It won't be a full-time capacity, but I can't wait to help and be a part of him building an excellent program there.
Coach, if you could slide just an inch to your left, you'll be in the screen. Tommy, you're good. Your dad has to come your way a little bit. Just there we go. Just so we can see you both. All right. How much has the game changed since your dad has been away? How much has high school football changed, Tom?
Well, I don't know if this is what you mean, but the last couple of years with all the COVID stuff was probably a major headache. But beyond that, I think there's probably a lot more that's similar when it comes to, and again, this is an experience I had being in different programs, just the rapport you get with the kids and the coaching staff. And ultimately what it takes to win, I think, are those two things. You got to have a great relational rapport with your players, and your staff's got to be hardworking, get along, and just be a bunch of good dudes. And I've been a part of a lot of staffs like that, and that's kind of my number one goal at San Marcos, is to get that rolling.
So I heard Jason Sexler's coming back to be your OC. Is that true?
Yeah, Coach and I are real good friends. So I'm obviously very happy to have him. He's going to be a great mentor. He's obviously going to run the offense, and I'm just can't wait to get back together with him. So, really looking forward to that.
Tommy, my impressions is that school that you've coached at now, or the head coach of, is primed to break out. It has the facilities. Correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't have a feeder program. I remember interviewing Jason years ago when he was the head coach, and I believe you were on staff, and he had like 120 kids in uniform from the young ranks up to varsity. It seemed to me like with those kind of numbers, you're going to find a good player or two.
Without a doubt. And there's obviously a lot of excitement on campus. I actually never left the campus. I've been teaching there the whole time. So the student section itself, it's bananas. They have such a great time at the games, and the support from leadership on site is nothing short of amazing. So, like I said, I cannot wait to get rolling. I can't wait to meet the kids and get a good staff together and see if we can, get things rolling at a high level again.
So I always picture your dad as being this like harsh disciplinarian. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but when I was in high school, you remember Clancy took over the Secret Service for Obama. He was actually my high school coach at the time. So we ran this Catholic school, strict, tight program. I always picture your dad being that way. Are you the same way, or you not that way, John?
Great question. I think it starts with kids before you can be strict and before you can be hard on kids. I think they have to know that you care about them and that they can trust you. And I think one of the skills that I have is I like working with kids, and ultimately I hold high standards for them. And I do that by being accountable myself, being there, working hard, and setting a good example, and then demanding that from them as well. So. Yes, but I do it through trust, and that is, again, my plan for San Marcos.
Yeah, it comes down to trust, loyalty, and respect, and I believe in holding accountability. But it also there's a need for second chances, and kids need to know that you love them and that you care about them, not just as football players, but as people. And as long as they believe that, and you've been there and done that in their lives, they're willing to accept the discipline.
So, Dad, what's your advice to son?
He lived in the house for about, 20 years. So he's heard an awful lot of advice. And of course, he coached with me for 5 or 6. So he saw the way we did it, and he was fully a part of that. And had major responsibilities and a major impact on our success, both as a player and as a coach. And in all honesty, he's prepared. He's been there. He's done that. He's seen different people do it different ways. We do talk regularly about football. I will be a part of the program somehow, some way, assisting him as I am physically able. And I can't wait for it. And he's ready. And he'll learn more as you go. I wasn't the best head coach I was my first year, but I was a lot better a few years later. And he's going to grow into the job, but he's ready right now.
Tom, is that your old bedroom that your dad turned into a trophy room?
not exactly, but not far from it. Yeah.
I saw the race car bed in the background.
Hey, come on.
Is it safe to say then, Tom, you're kind of like the defensive side of the ball, or if Jason's running the offensive side of the ball, or are you a game manager? How do you describe yourself as a head coach now?
Yeah. So coming in, and I put a lot of thought into this, and Coach Texter and I have talked a lot about this. Coming in right off the bat, yes, I'm gonna run the defensive side of the ball. I'll also manage the game as it relates to any decisions or clock management. And then I'm going to develop, kind of taking after my dad, kind of watching how he kind of worked through his years at Oceanside. I'd like to develop into a play caller on the offensive side as well. So going to do a lot of, learning from Coach Texter, from, my father. And then obviously I made some great connections with people that I'm still close with. So Coach McNeil over there at Carlsbad, I'm sure I'll be bothering him every once in a while about advice. So that's the route I plan on taking. But yeah, right off the bat, definitely focus on defense.
Coach Carroll, so you're committing, you're coming back to PPR, right? Because I know, Paul likes the Silver Foxes, and I've seen him talking to Gary Chapman a lot, and I felt like he was trying to replace you with Gary. But I just want to make sure you're coming back this year, and that wasn't going to happen. Are you committing you're coming back next year?
I think I can commit right now that I'll be coming back, and you're going to have to live with me for another year.
You know what's going on there, John? Is he wants to get your salary off the books so that he can up his rate. That is what's really going on.
He's trying to get rid of me. He's trying to push me out.
Obvious? Is that obvious?
Jeez. Hey, can we talk? And I'll probably wander you into a conversation you don't want to talk about. But it seems to me one of the challenges for coaches these days is keeping their good players at their school. Now, I don't know if you have to worry about some of the private schools siphoning off your players, but I know you do have to worry about another public school, a very prominent public school just down the road from you. How does a coach keep his kids?
I think you got to provide an experience that kids want to be a part of. I think it starts there. So obviously, first steps, meeting them, getting them to buy in. I talked about trust a little while ago, but getting them to trust. And then, when it comes down to getting kids to want to play for your program, I mean, the kids they talk to each other. So it's going to come down to, hey, we love playing for Coach Carroll at San Marcos. And then getting kids on campus that are playing other sports, getting them out to play football because they want to be a part of that experience. And that's my goal. I got to create an experience that kids want to be a part of. And that way they're not even looking at that point.
John, what is your thoughts on that? Because, I don't want to say we come from the same era, but I remember being in high school and there was no such thing as a transfer. I think, actually, I transferred one time. I'm sorry. But other than that, I did. I went to Lower Merion where Kobe went, and then I got kicked out. I more got kicked out. I didn't transfer. But nowadays, that's just something we never even dealt with. Is that strange to you? Because you're going to be back on the sideline again and you see the transfer thing. That's just something we never dealt with.
No, we didn't. And honestly, kids did move around and have for years and years and years within the North County throughout my experience. That goes back to 1989. But it was mostly within the school district itself. In our case, it was Oceanside and El Camino. Some went to El Camino, some went to Oceanside. And a lot of it had to do with how well the particular school was doing at that time. But you know what it comes down to? We're where we're at, and we're not going to put the genie back in the bottle. So what you have to do is you've got to create that experience that Tom was talking about. That is one that kids are going to become your best ambassadors. They're going to go out and talk it up to other kids, and the parents are going to talk it up to other parents, unsolicited, just word of mouth. Is going to save from losing kids, and you never know, maybe without ever knowing it, might entice some kids to want to come your way.
I vaguely remember a lot of players showing up at Oceanside that wanted to play at Oceanside. I don't know what we called it back then. It just seemed like it happened, though.
Well, kids want to play where the coaching is the best, and kids want to play where the experience is going to be the best and where they have the best chance to succeed. And who blames them? But you have
Right.
to do it legally. Coaches cannot recruit. Coaches cannot direct other people to recruit, and any such transfer has to be done with all the appropriate paperwork. I don't know if that always happens in today's world, but it did at Oceanside.
So, Tom, is that something you can't even worry about? Or, you just do your thing, try to create the best possible atmosphere?
Yeah, you got to start, on campus. So you got to look at, kind of going back to what I said, you got to have a great experience, and then you've got to be able to, get kids to be ambassadors. You got to get kids playing multiple sports, and then from there, you just, you got to work with what you have.
Right.
I guess, and the other part is, what do you guys think on going forward? You think, going forward, not even next year, but 5 years from now, is everybody going to have a travel 7-on-7 team in order to be competitive in the fall just to keep kids? Do you see that happen in 5 years down the road?
Or now?
Yeah, I think it's already kind of active in a lot of areas. The big thing there would be, what can you offer in the off season? And that's probably something that's a little bit newer to, the 2010s and 2020s, where coaches are maybe more involved in January and February, possibly in 7-on-7 leagues with their own kids. And then again, kids are, sharing the experiences they're having, and hopefully the school you're working at is giving a good experience.
I really can't stand the travel 7-on-7s, the all-star type 7-on-7 games. I think that number one, puts kids at more risk of physical injury, as we're worried about physical injury. And number two, you don't want repetitive movements. You want kids' bodies doing different things at different times in the year. You don't want them doing the same route, the same cut, the same, for 365 days a year. I think that just increases the damage to joints. And I think medical science has shown that. Parents, get your kids out of that. No year-round movements or activities. Get them in alternative movements, alternative activities, alternative sports, and they're going to be more healthy and they're going to be better for it.
And I think, I guess a lot, for me is, and I don't know if they coincided together, but it was almost at the point where, and you remember, Coach, when you used to coach, it was 10 of your staff would be on campus. And then, districts and boards and unions started taking those jobs away, and you'd only have 1 or 2 on campus. Then the outside 7-on-7 guys came, then kids started following them. So it's almost like a back and forth that you can't get out of now.
The great thing about San Marcos, I can say, though, is there seems to be a very like assertive effort to get teachers that are coaching sports. So that's one of the many reasons I'm excited to be where I'm at. Because
is your staff intact now? Do you know who you're going to have, or are you still searching?
I'm meeting with coaches tomorrow. I have meetings with coaches. So probably my hope is to have it at least almost intact by the end of January. But yeah, I have a handful of guys who I've worked with over the years that are excited to.
And did I read somewhere that your person you're replacing, Coach Stank, is going to stay on as an assistant, or did I?
Yeah, he and I are going to talk next week, so we'll kind of see what that looks like. But yeah, Coach and I have a good working relationship, and we'll see where that goes.
Do you think I sent you my resume? Did it go to your junk mail? I never got a response back. I don't know why.
You sure? You right email? You sure?
Yeah, it's a KUSI email. You'll see.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Tom, life is filled with disappointments. And, I'm sure you thought when that job became available that you were not only a solid candidate, that for perhaps the candidate that should have gotten the job. When they went in a different direction, what did you learn from that experience? How bitter were you? And talk about overcoming obstacles in life.
Great question. I think, facing adversity is a skill that we need to develop, especially, starting at a young age. I'm kind of hoping to bring that to the program. This kind of shared purpose of overcoming adversity together, I think is a great way to build bonds amongst players and their peers, as well as their coaches and community. So long story short, I don't know that, I wasn't happy with the decision, but, you don't always get your way, and you can be better for it. And I kind of think I'm more ready now, so I'm excited.
So from day one,
teach kids.
Say that again,
from day
Coach?
one.
John, say that again, please.
I said that's a good lesson to teach kids right there. Learning to overcome adversity, and to be honest with you, you shouldn't be undefeated all the time. You need that loss to experience what it feels like, and to experience the ability to come back and to prove to yourself that you can come back. That's a great experience.
Is there something like day one that you look at, and you've been there, around campus long enough, culture-wise, that you're going to focus that on the top of your mind is I want to change this from day one?
Yeah, and this is something that the leadership at our campus has heard me say a lot. But ultimately, I'm going to model mainly 3 different characteristics that I think are going to lead to success with the kids. And it's ultimately to be prepared. What does that look like in the off season, in season? What does it look like from a coach, from a player, to play with effort? What does that look like in the off season? What does that look like in season? And then finally to execute your duty. And again, what does that look like in the off season and in season? And then finally, I think at San Marcos more specifically, even watching over the last couple of years where they played hard, they lost some tough, real tight games, but ultimately kind of learning how to win again and make that more kind of like the expectation. And I think if we can adopt those 3 characteristics I mentioned throughout the program, that's how we're going to define our success.
And I would add to that, well, he does those 3 things, which are a great way to evaluate your kids and have high expectations. It's to demand excellence. So in the 3 things that Tom was talking about, as you do those 3 things, and as you measure those 3 things, and you define those 3 things, you also demand excellence in those 3 things. And you explain what excellence means, and you hold the kids accountable for that.
And you celebrate when you get it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize that. I mean, and you brought it up, and it just dawned on me. I'd been on a lot of teams at every level, and the majority of them, our culture was we expected, it was a tight game in the 4th game, we all expected to lose. And then rarely, maybe 1 or 2 years out of those 15, you get on a culture, a team where you expect to win, actually, if it's a tight game in the 4th quarter. So that's harder. I mean, people don't realize, the difference in that.
And the psychological edge can't even be measured. It's so important. So that really is kind of that's what we have to build if we're going to be successful.
Wow. Hey, I assume you're going to be watching the Holiday Bowl. We're recording this Tuesday morning, just before the Holiday Bowl kicks off. There's a receiver there that you probably want to keep an eye on, right?
Yeah, great young man, yeah. And he doesn't need any introduction. He's a phenomenal football player, great young man. Just stay in contact to this day. Can't wait to see what he does tonight versus the rest of his career.
What's going on at San Marcos? Because don't you have another great receiver in the program right now? Nix or or who were we talking about last week?
Yeah, Nick's, I think.
Yeah, there's a young guy. He had an older brother, played for us a few years ago. Dad was a coach on the staff, so know the family very well. But yeah, a young man, Jason Nix, who's outstanding freshman, started on the varsity this last year. So excited to work with him.
How often does that happen? I mean, you have a kid ready at that level.
Well, the guy you mentioned earlier that's playing for UCLA, Kyle Phillips, he played on the varsity level. So I know.
So,
Coach,
so what's going
Jason
on there?
Coach,
Is that just random, or is there like something in the water that breeds great wide receivers?
Good question.
Whatever it is, you want more of it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not upset about it.
So it's no secret Texler likes to throw sometimes. Do you guys have, I mean, what's it look like at quarterback? You have a great receiver. You got an offense coordinator who likes to throw if he could 10% of the time.
I've got to, I'm still meeting the team. So the kids who are going to be seniors this year would have been in 8th grade when I was last with the program. So I know a few of the players, but for step one is really going to be to get to know the players. And I'm going to get a chance to do that. We're going to have a 6th period football PE class, which will be a great tool to get the off season going.
That's critical, isn't it?
And not every school has it.
That should be like a common, that should be mandatory.
Agreed.
Yeah, any school that wants success has to do that. And if you value what a successful football program can do on a high school campus, you got to give them the tools for success. And that is one of the tools for success: contact with the kids, training, physical development, mental, psychological development, and to be able to solve problems before they occur. I don't know what administration wouldn't want that.
Well, unfortunately, there's plenty.
Yeah, there is. Will there be any time set aside during the week for the team to view Carroll's Corner?
No, I'm going to block it out.
Hey,
if I'm coaching over there, I'll show it to the kids and the coaches every single day.
Of course you should.
You don't even have to coach. Just walk around with one of those, I was going to say VCR. That's all we are. VCR TV stand and just roll around the field all day. The whole practice.
Have it on a backpack on your back. Hey, I know you're here to talk about San Marcos, but it was a conversation that I'd like to get your guys' take on. Being that, Coach, if I'm not mistaken, you coached a team in the Trinity League, did you not? At one time, John, weren't you?
Yeah, Servite High School.
Right.
I was a defensive coordinator in the early 80s. It was called the Angeles League at that time, but it was basically the same makeup of, the powerhouses of the Southern section. We won back-to-back CIF championships there and won a state championship.
So I'm sure you've probably heard the discussion about the gap between Cathedral and the rest of the CIF. You probably don't like we were talking about, well, maybe Cathedral should be in the Avocado League, or maybe Cathedral should be moved out to the Trinity League, where it's more apples and apples, oranges and oranges as it relates to rules. Do you guys have any take on any of that? First of all, do you agree with my premise that the gap between Cathedral and the rest of the county is getting wider and not closer?
I think it is getting wider. And the reason for that, of course, is number one, they're having success. And what did we talk about earlier? Kids want to be where there's, you're going to be successful, and where your potential. You can, by the way, as far as scholarships go, colleges, coaches find kids wherever they're at. You could play at any high school in the county, and if you show all the measurables and you're academically eligible, you show all the physical measurables that college coaches are looking for, they will find you. They put a lot of money into that. So kids, you don't have to leave a school to go find a scholarship. That's nonsense. But some kids will leave a school or start at a school because of its success. I'm sure that happened when we were at Oceanside and we were running through everybody for all those years. But I do think that the private schools seem to be getting richer at the expense of some public schools.
And I know we have this debate all the time. I don't know if I agree with the gap widening. I mean, of course it did this year, but I mean, they just had a monster senior class this year that I don't really know if they can replace those guys and whether they'll be nearly as good next year as they are this year. Of course, somebody always moves from Florida and Alabama and Texas and converts from being Presbyterian to Catholic over the summer. But I mean, realistically, that's a killer class that they just had of seniors that they have
so your
to replace.
opinion, it was a fluke, or not a fluke, but it was a Haley's Common, a generational team.
Well, they're getting a lot more kids from other parts of the area, like for instance, North County, for speaking about Cathedral. And of course, that's good for them. That's not good for the schools that those kids would have gone to from the North County. But again, you can't blame the kids and you can't blame the parents because people want what's best for their kids.
Well, yeah, I mean, the educational opportunity alone is better than some public schools, better than most public schools.
But I do see it creating a widening of the gap for the future, and that does concern me. And I don't know what the answer is to that.
Well, what if the answer was, Tom, putting them in a league where they're at least getting pounded by teams their size and having to play your schedule? You know, they wouldn't have as many respites, if you will.
I think the first complaint from like an Avocado League team would probably be because by playing them, you're subjecting kids who potentially would have came to your school to them, and you could be almost kind of opening the door for them. But I'll be honest, I'm not going to, starting off at San Marcos High School, it starts again going back to making that experience one that kids want to be a part of. I'm not so much worried about Cathedral as I am about getting San Marcos rolling.
Fair enough.
And like Coach Grossman mentioned, they had a great class. I was at Carlsbad last year. I got to see it up from the sideline. Outstanding football team. There have been other outstanding football teams, year in, year out. So I'm not ready to say that they're unbeatable because they've been beat, and they've been beat prior to this last year.
Okay, and let's give it some time. I'm with that. Well, Tom, as we wrap this up.
Sorry, one more thing, Paul. And I guess the thing with Cathedral, and you said it, it's a generational team, but you're only supposed to have a generational team once every generation. Their generations are every 2 years. I think that's what people are a little worried about with them. I mean, their generational teams are every 2 or 3 years, not every generation.
Fair enough. Point made. So as we wrap this up, Tom, all I can say is that when I attend your first practice, you'll do a lot better than your father did, who basically kicked me off the field on my first 5 minutes in Oceanside. If you could just be even remotely hospitable, I think you and I are going to get off to a much better start than with the previous generation.
Yeah, I lost you at the last second there, but I grew up watching PPR. It was the highlight of Friday nights after our game. So you've always got a home in San Marcos if I'm there. That's for sure.
Well, but if I'm on the field at that time, you're going.
Your dad yelled at me. I hadn't even shook his hand yet, and he yelled at me. Wow. He doesn't remember it mysteriously, but I sure do.
I'm not shocked.
Hey, practice is over. Wait till practice is over. All right, gentlemen, Tom, thank you for doing this. I know you're busy. Coach Carroll, thank you for doing this. And I owe you a beer. Burt, thank you for doing this.
I got my own beer, Paul. Thank you.
Great. Gang, we'll
5 o'clock somewhere.
I'll see you down the road, okay, Tom?
Thank you for having me.
All right, podcast 21 is over.